Hello and welcome to my academic Let's Play for Gradius III from Konami for the Super Nintendo. So Gradius is a shoot-'em-up game, or shmup as they're often called. They're known as STGs in Japan, otherwise known as shooter. So if you ask a Japanese person what a shooter game is, they're going to not think of Call of Duty, they'll tend to think of one of these side-scrolling games where you play as a little spaceship shooting bullets. So it's for the Super Nintendo. It was originally for the arcade, where they would you get to play, get additional lives for 25 cents or 100 yen a piece, and if you died, you could pay more money and continue to play. So that was the original business model. It was ported to the Super Nintendo in this version, about 25 years ago at this point, and they actually sold it for $60 a pop, where it did pretty well, certainly riding the coattails of the Super Nintendo launch fever. It's kind of interesting to ask whether a game like this would be successful today. Maybe not so much. Games like this, could be made by indies, but I've been told that the assets required for this game are kind of beyond the scope of most indie teams, unless they're working for a long time. So it could happen, but it's not exactly a money maker. You could sell these games digitally, but it's not a guaranteed hit, and you certainly couldn't sell them for what they were back in the day, and you certainly couldn't put it down for 25 cents a pop in the arcade, because arcades don't really exist anymore, at least not in North America. They don't. You can still see them in Japan a little bit, but it's not the same as it was in the 80s and the 90s. So I'm going to try and play and talk about how this works as a game and how it's fun. Just briefly, you can see I'm collecting these little energy orbs. Whoa, and I've died. You collect energy orbs, and you go along the linear path at the bottom of the screen. You can see there's like a kind of different power-ups you can choose based on how many energy orbs you have. So they've given me one at the beginning. I'm going to choose speed up. That makes me go a little faster. Maybe you can see that. And I'm going to collect a few more and try to become more powerful. So it's worth examining this under Garneau's 14 Forms of Fun. We'll just list the relevant ones. First of all, beauty. I think this game is beautiful. Maybe you have different eyes than I do, but I think it still has this kind of old school futuristic charm, if that makes sense. It's got this crystalline music and good graphics, and I think it does kind of give the sense pleasure of a beautiful kind of setting. Although, if you looked at this and you just thought old, I would understand that too. It's also got immersion. Now, I wouldn't say this is like immersion, like I don't really believe that I'm a fighter pilot saving the galaxy, but I do get lost in the sense of the world and the sense of the action in the screen. So I do kind of disappear into the game, if that makes sense. Not exactly VR, but something like it. It's also, let's look at it through the eyes of social interaction. It's a single-player game. This game doesn't really foster a competitive community in the sense of, Street Fighter or a MOBA or something like that. But imagine this game back in the 80s or the 90s, where, especially in Japan, you actually would meet people in the arcade and you'd compete for the score, and it did foster a community. That's kind of gone now in a lot of ways, but there is an online community, and they do like to show off their ability to play this game. Some people stream it, and they try and get what's called a 1cc, a 1 credit clear. They don't die at all, which I've already failed that goal. So there is a kind of sense of community that's fostered from it. Let's also look at power. If I get enough power-ups, I become more powerful, and I feel more, I have more agency to win. Right now, I'm kind of, I'm trying to talk and play at the same time, and I don't feel like I have that much power-ups, as many as I should have by this point, so I don't feel that power yet, but if I did, I would feel good. Okay, this is very difficult, and I've died again. Well, that's fine, because then I get to talk about advancement, which I did not accomplish. Were I to do better in this game and advance, I would feel much better about myself, and maybe I will yet, but we'll see. Photon is the missile. Really useful on this boss. I'm being sarcastic, of course. Let's see if I can do a little better here. Alright, so we also want to look at this game through Roger Kayoi's theories of fun. He had 4 distinct categories, or I should say types of play. and I'll get to talk about them a little more because I just died. So egg on is competition. We briefly talked about that earlier. There is the sense of wanting to compete with other scores. There's a score at the top of the game. This isn't particularly like a competitive game, as I mentioned. You can't compete with other players, at the same time or anything like that. So it's poor in that sense. Aliyah is the sense of chance, as in gambling games, maybe random items pick up in games. You don't know what you're going to get. I feel that's not really on display in this game in particular. Really, actually, there's not a lot of random number generators going on here. You kind of have the same waves of energy, enemies, I should say, and died again, and game over. And so it's kind of the same every time through. I don't think that Aliyah really applies. Mimicry. I really would like to get back into this game here. Continue, yes. Mimicry. Okay, that's the realm of role play. I don't know that I really have this fantasy of becoming a fighter pilot and saving the galaxy. Well, I mean, we all do to some extent, but not particularly played out in this game. It's not Star Citizen or something like that. Although there is the kind of the role of being a cool person who can manipulate this ship and weave through bullets, and there is a kind of a fantasy that you play out, but I wouldn't consider it particularly strong as role play. Ilinx is altering perception, whoops, and again, this game is not VR, but it does, especially for 1991, it does put you into a realm of sight and sound that is kind of all enveloping, and it does give that fun, or I should say, escape into another world. So again, Roger Caillois also came out with these two different categories of game fun: Ludus and Paideia. So. This is not going to be a one credit clear, let's say. Ludus is the sense of logic and problem solving, and there is definitely that technical aspect to mastering this game. Which power-ups do you get? How do you best weave through enemies? Which enemies are coming next, and can you learn to predict them and outwit them? And that's definitely at play in this game. This game suffers from what's called a Gradius syndrome. This game is Gradius. If you lose your power-ups and then start over again, then you feel very underpowered, and it's kind of unfair. But such is the game. So Ludus was one of those, and the other one is Paideia. And Paideia is the sense of being kind of lost in a wild ecstasy of play, getting really lost in the chaos of survival. Will you win or will you lose? And it's much more of a visceral form of play. And I gotta say, that's kind of my aim in games. I'm not really the mastery guy. I'm not really the high score, one credit clear. I don't care about that so much. I kind of like the immersion, just getting lost in the wild fun of the game. And getting lost in the music, playing, surviving the enemies, and really kind of having an out-of-body experience, enjoying the game. So I'd say that's very strong in this game. It happens in many games where if the game is fun, you lose yourself in it, and unless you're bad at it. And this definitely has that. So participatory gaming, as I mentioned, there was a sense of community in the arcade days, and there's a smaller sense of community in the new online era of streaming games. Some people do like to watch these 1cc, one credit clear plays of games, but it's not particularly well suited for that. This is not exactly Dota 2 in its ability to get people to watch, on live playing online or anything like that. There are ways maybe in which you could increase social hooks in a newer version of the game, have other audience members participate, but generally it's actually kind of a solitary experience, and I don't think it's that successful in the modern world of getting people to participate and watch online and foster a community. So it's maybe there's a reason why these games have become increasingly niche, and That's true, actually. The company that made this, Konami, is kind of infamous for recently having get out of most console and arcade games altogether, and their shoot 'em up games are not exactly not making a new one. The last one was about 10 years ago, which is weird that they even did it that recent. Um, and some of these companies who are dedicated to making shoot 'em up games have kind of gone under. It really isn't that sustainable of a business model. So I love these games. I wish there was a way to have them continue, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they're really well suited for this age. But things change, and who knows? Maybe something like this will become fostered again. You know, if the devices change, if the social media landscape changes. But we can't really say for now. So that was my very poor playthrough of Gradius III. I didn't really get a chance to show off most of the levels because it's very hard to play and talk, but I think I did cover the concepts as much as I wanted to, so I feel pretty successful in that regard. So thank you very much for watching. I encourage you to play this game. If you want to play it, you can play it on the Wii Virtual Console. It's got to be under $10. Or, get a Super Nintendo. Or go to the arcades in Japan. I'm sure you'll find one or two if you go hunting. Great, thank you very much. Thanks for watching.